How do you feel about our gross profit this year?
That's a great question, Jake. I'm glad you asked. I think I see two steps. I see the first step for people who are doing this, getting to 10K monthly recurring is a impressive and difficult thing. And I'll leave it at that. It's impressive and it's difficult, but also once you get there, you realize that getting to 10K a month is honestly not that hard. And it's also not the hard part of what's coming next.
Cody, if you could go travel anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
That is a good question. And I feel like a trick question because of where we are at the moment. But I'll say where we are because that sounds like a good answer. And we're in Cartagena, Colombia.
Yes. South America. This is my first time being in a new continent, actually. I've only ever been in, we was in Mexico twice. And then Cartagena, since that's in South America, obviously. So first time being in a completely new continent, but it doesn't really feel much more different than Mexico. Only everything is insanely cheaper. Like imagine everything in the United States, but divided by 5. And that's it. So
yeah, it's pretty close.
If McDonald's meal costs you $10, it costs $2 here.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty insane. For the listener, yeah. So we, at the end of the year, we had some money to spend. But we also have an employee, or not employee, team member, Lisa, as you're aware, who lives in Cartagena. No, she lives in Bogota right now for school, but she's from the Cartagena, Colombia area, which is a coastal city in Colombia. And we've actually brought her to Iowa City last October, to spend it with her at her birthday there with her brother. We talked about it on the previous episode, but also just kind of bringing her up to speed on kind of what it would be like to be full-time now that she's graduating with her bachelor's. But Cody and I went back and forth on bringing her here or going to Colombia to see her. And one of the reasons why we wanted to go to Colombia was more for like a selfish reason, kind of like a vacation. That was my reasoning. It was ultimately cheaper to bring her to Iowa, which is what we did. But at the end of the day, I convinced you to go to Colombia.
Yeah, I mean, we negotiated, right? I mean, the big thing was we wanted to talk to Lisa in person to explain the position of business, what a future would look like, all those sorts of things, and wanted to do that sooner than later. And I also didn't have a big enough time window for us to come down here. So right now I'm in between semesters with school. So it was cheaper. We saved money. We had the talk. We were able to in Iowa, negotiated, and then we came down here, and that's where we are in January. And it's great because Iowa sucks right now. Jake's further up north, which means it's worse. And yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. What's been your favorite moment in Colombia since being here? We've been here since Saturday, and what's today? Wednesday? We leave on Friday. So we've been here, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 5 days. Mm-hmm. What's been your favorite moment being here?
I don't know if I have a single favorite, but going out to eat and just spending time with good people. So Lisette's brother, who I'm good friends with, we're in the same Japanese program at school. So he was here for a little bit, got to hang out with him. Also our contact, I suppose our account manager at On Top, who handles the payment logistics and contracted logistics of keeping our business legit internationally. He's here, and then we were able to meet Laura, who's also at On Top too, and just more of On Top team. They're great. We've done a lot of fun.
We've talked a little bit about On Top before. Do you want to explain a little bit about like what On Top actually does for us?
Yeah, and it's kind of weird to say it because I think that their value proposition or their ideal pitch is different even from what we've seen or found. But once we found out that we had a good prospect outside of the U.S., we had to figure out legally how to pay them and work with them. Yeah, that's it. I guess it's pay and work with legally. Those are the two biggest things. And fortunately, Lisette knew Diego. She did all the research for us, actually. We reached out to a lawyer. We talked to him about it. He gave feedback. And
I was considering paying her in Bitcoin or like some other crypto because I had no idea how to pay someone overseas. I mean, obviously you can do like, bank transfer, but then you have the bank transfer fee and then you've got the currency conversion fee.
Yep.
Then she's got taxes to worry about. And then we've got to figure out the whole tax logistics. And so like, I was just going to be like, well, we could just do like a USD coin or something like that.
Yep.
And, the other way was like literally just pay her like via an app and then just be like, figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess technically having somebody help facilitate this isn't necessary. If these people are independent contractors, they are freelancing their services, you're paying them however you want to pay them, and then whatever legal agreements you choose to go into with them, regardless of where they are, you can do all that. But ultimately, with how much On Top costs us to give us the peace of mind of knowing that it's all just taken care of. So they handle payments, we pay them, and then they're basically a middleman. But they do more than that too, because they offer some expertise in the markets that we're paying into with just knowledge and stuff that we don't know about. There are things that we've learned about Colombia and how people who are in Colombia like to be paid that we didn't know. We didn't know what was ideal, what was best for them. We were just operating from we have to pay them and that's it. But there is more to it, and they offer that expertise as well. And they are also the legal shield, right? There's a few different ways that you can do it. I don't want to go fully into it, but in the simplest way, as I say it, is just that they'll be in the middle to act as a legal buffer. So you work with them, they work with your contractor, and then if there's issues, you'll work it out with On Top on both sides.
I want to comment on how weird this podcast setup is today. Like, I am so out of my element right now. It's crazy. So usually Cody and I are like in our own offices and we're just talking to each other. But now, like, I don't know whether I look at the camera or I look at you, but we're so like weirdly close to each other. It feels like we're lovers, and like I don't know how to feel about it. But if we ever post these videos, you'll see that like we're literally recording on a phone. That's our audio device. And then I brought my laptop and webcam just to record the video, and then we'll just match it up together and we'll see what happens.
We tested other things too, though, and it actually turned out this was going to be one of the easiest.
I brought like my Shure microphone that I usually use, and it just, I don't know, the sound was just weird. We found this nobody here speaks English. So here's the one thing about Mexico is that like 8 out of 10 people will speak English.
Mm-hmm.
You come to Colombia, you're lucky if you find 1 out of 10 people that speaks English.
Yep.
So fortunately, I have been learning quite a bit of Spanish, and it's helped us in a lot of situations. I'm surprised the last 2 months I've learned quite a bit. I got to use one today, which was I just walked into a place and I said una mesa para 5 personas, which just means a table for 5. But it's been really fulfilling to be able to communicate to an extent. However, trying to find like a place to record that was in our hotel room where the girls are was a little difficult. So we came down to the front lobby, and couldn't find a place. Cody did some exploring. We found this little like staircase that came up to this private like conference room, basically.
It says VIP.
Yeah.
So
Sala, SALA VIP. I don't know what that means.
Let's give them a shout out just in case anybody actually ends up here, because they have been pretty great as far as goes.
Hotel Regatta, Cartagena.
Yep. We got the Cartagena.
It's been a pretty decent hotel thus far. I mean, we don't no complaints other than it's a cheap hotel. But yeah, I just plugged into my Google Translator app and I was like, hey, can we use this room for an hour? And yeah, they were super open to it. It's also 11 o'clock at night, so I mean, no one else is using it. But for those of you who can't see, I made Cody wear a Hawaiian shirt for the recording.
Yep.
And he was very reluctant to do so. So just like being able to pay Lisette and force Lisette or Cody to consider having Lisette work for us, I am also forcing Cody to wear a Hawaiian print shirt while in Colombia. But there's been a lot of negative stigmas with Colombia that I've heard.
Yeah.
Thugs, the gangs, all that stuff. And we haven't run across any of that. It really just feels like Mexico.
I think the weird thing, I guess, has been that people have been, I guess I should say, I've come in with zero. I had, all that I've thought about is how I've spent 2.5 years at this point learning Japanese. And then we end up in a Spanish-speaking country, which I remember zero from high school. And it's been super enlightening because you kind of realize what it's like to know zero in a country that operates with a different language. But sorry, I think you were going somewhere and I totally went off a little.
I was just commenting on how weird this whole like how out of element I am.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, out of element. And I don't even know if I would. We've had a good time, but only because we have people with us that can make our lives easier. This would be really hard to do if we didn't have that.
That's true. I was commenting on that with Lauren. I was saying this experience has been better than Mexico because we have Lisette, we have Diego, we have Javier, we have, well, that's it. But
Laura, we're giving her a shout out.
Laura, and her boyfriend Pablo.
Yep.
But they've been excellent hosts. They've shown us the ropes of Colombia, where to go, and
oh yes, sorry, Colombian reputation. That's where I want to go a little bit because I do nothing. I think if you talk to people in the States in general, if they come up with anything, it's going to be Pablo Escobar and cocaine, right? So, and I guess that isn't a good image. I understand that, but it was also, a while ago at this point. So, when I mentioned it to like my mom, of course she's like, be safe. And if you talk to people who are, over 55, maybe they might have a different image, but everything has been cool.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And people who like don't understand you very well, but you make an effort to try to speak Spanish just a little bit. Like even if you just say like, disculpe, por favor, which just means like, excuse me, please. They like are really welcoming with it on like, hey, thank you for learning, trying. And like, it's just all met with smiles. But speaking of Pablo Escobar, we had a really unique experience related to Pablo Escobar.
We did
here. I posted it on my social. I don't know if you shared it, but I tagged you.
Yep.
Lisette took us snorkeling and we call it her island because that's what she calls it. But
it's her island.
She doesn't actually own it.
She does.
So we went to like a coral reef. We snorkeled with the coral there, got to look at it. And then we went to a second coral location. So a crazy thing, we rented a boat, just two guys on a boat, like a motorboat, and then, us four. And they took us everywhere we wanted to go for an entire day, literally from 10 a.m. to like 5 p.m. And it cost us, what, $400?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so split between 4 people, that's like nothing. So they took us to one snorkeling location. Then we went to the second snorkeling location. Okay, this is wild. So the second snorkeling location. First of all the water is like clear blue.
Yeah, it's
like turquoise almost. The second location was super eerie. So we pull into like this bay area of like a villa. Turns out it's Pablo Escobar's villa, like one of them. And the whole point of snorkeling in this area is you can kind of see the bottom of it. Like it's just sand. There really isn't much to see except for the big ass airplane at the bottom of the bay. Like there's just a sunken airplane sticking out of the bottom of the water about 20 meters down. And there's no way that there's no way you can stick your face under that water and not think one of two things. Either one, holy shit, this is scary and eerie, or I'm going to touch that.
But it wasn't 20 meters. What was it? It was
20. So the cockpit is 21 meters down.
No way.
Yeah, that's what
Really?
that's what Lisa said. Yeah. So the cockpit was 21 meters. No.
So,
yeah, 21 meters.
That seems far. Because that would have been 60 feet.
Maybe I'm wrong. 21 feet.
It was definitely like 20 feet to maybe like a part of the wing. It was a ways down there. Because I know because I used to be a lifeguard. I like swimming, but I pretty much cap out at like 15 feet. My ears are like, hey, stop. Don't do this. Don't go any further. But I'll just keep going because you were telling the story.
Okay, so it was pretty deep. However, the wing kind of one of the wings stuck out into the water. And that wing was probably about, the tip of it was like 15 feet down, like underneath the surface. And then the other wing, I think, was like buried in the actual ground. So I had a GoPro. I bought a GoPro specifically for this trip. And I was like, I'm going to go touch it. So we did. We dove down, we swam down, and we touched it. The problem is, like, it felt like my head was gonna explode because like it was so deep for me to be diving down there, and I don't do any diving at all. And Cody went down and touched it too. But this thing looked like Lisa described it as like in Super Mario, that kraken that comes out of the water in those levels. Like that, it was like really scary because I thought that was gonna happen, but. Cody and I thought we could do something really wholesome and dive down together at the same time and touch the wing together. And we did. And it sounds really weird when I describe it, but, Lisa recorded it doing that. And, we got this really sick picture of us touching the wing on Pablo Escobar's plane at the bottom of his bay in his villa at the same time. And it was sick. I also learned that you're a fish because you can hold your breath for not only... I came up, I surfaced, and I was out of breath. I was gassed. I thought I was going to die on the way up. And Cody comes up, he's like, yeah, that was awesome.
Well, to be fair, you started a little further away. So I kept saying like, hey, let's scoot up a little bit. Because then if I see you like dive down and forward at the same time. But if we could just go straight down, then it also hurts your head. Though I think a little bit more to do it that way. So maybe not the best in that regard. But
I didn't think about it that way. I was like, I'm gonna go touch it.
But no, it was a very cool and bizarre experience. I think I wasn't thinking about it at the time how cool it was until afterwards. And I was talking to Jenny, and she was like, "That was really cool. Like that's a really cool thing that you did." But also when we were coming in, it just felt like a movie. We come into the cove, and there's probably 4 or 5 other boats. Some are yachts, I think.
Yeah.
And there's, beautiful women, very muscly, intimidating men. It almost looks like the opening scene, like the opening 10-minute scene of a Bond or Fast and Furious film. And I just kept thinking, this is very cool, but I don't know how I fit in here other than the nerdy business guy in the boat somewhere or something. I don't know. It was great though. It was very cool.
So all of this 18-minute opening was really just to explain that, like, hey, we're in Colombia. We're celebrating what we did this year by taking an essentially expense-paid trip to Colombia and having fun at basically at the expense of Evergrow. So we thought it would be a good idea. Tropical BA does this. They kind of go over, they do like a yearly recap of how they did in business. And I thought we could do the same thing, but be a little bit more transparent than them, even so, because they're just kind of percentages. Like, we increase this, we decrease this by percentages. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to actually give you dollar numbers of like how Evergrow, like the size of us now. And, you know, maybe you don't think we're as big as we are. Maybe you think we're bigger than we are. You probably think we're not as big as you thought we are, because we're really not that big.
We're not. No. Yeah. And I guess there's probably, we'll go over 3 of the big ones, which are total income, then gross profit, and then we'll talk net profit. And I don't, it's good to share all of them so you get a better idea and a better picture, because they mean different things. But we'd like to also talk through what they mean to us in business and why they changed in the ways that they did.
So I was just going to talk about revenue, but then I realized that we had an episode about how revenue is a fake vanity metric.
Right.
And then I was like, well, I guess we have to get a little more granular now.
So, okay, do you want me to read the numbers, or do you want to read them? How would you like to? What do you think is the best way to?
You're the numbers guy. I'll let you do it.
Okay. So first, we'll do percentages and then numbers. So let's talk about total income. Year over year, we grew 31.76% total income. Dollar amounts, it was about $56,000, and so in total, it was about 230,000. We were aiming for 250. We came a little bit short of that, which was a little bit of a bummer. But 30% as a total, I guess it's cool to see too. So that's that.
So that's our revenue. That's our fake vanity metric right there.
Yep.
That's the number that includes the ad spend that we charge our clients, and then we just spend right away. So our cost of goods sold. It also includes our profit margin, and then everything else before, like our expenses are paid for.
Yep. So we've talked about that before, how we charge clients ad spend, and then we spend it for them. And that does, honestly, it represents a decent chunk of why that grew, because we focus more on ad spend this year compared to last year. So that was a big contributor as for why it grew that way. But the other numbers still do show our growth, just not as big, because that was a big contributor, probably the single biggest contributor to the growth in total income.
Well, this was the first year that we made people go from, well, we didn't make people, but this is the first year that we forced new people on to go to $250 in ad spend versus $100 in ad spend. So previously, our foundation package was a $500 management with $100 ad spend, and then we upped the ad spend to $250 for a couple of reasons. One is because even at $3 cost per click, which is pretty low, and a $50 average cost per acquisition, our clients only getting 2 leads at $100 a month. Well, we wanted to make sure that they received adequate amount of leads for what they were paying, so at least 4 or 5 at $250 was more adequate, but also Google Ads cost per clicks just go up year over year. So yep. Requiring the higher ad spend really attributed to a lot of our growth in total income. But also, for some reason, I don't know why, but like clients with a lot more money came to us this year, where like in previous years, it was like, we'd get a lot of like $100,000, $400,000 revenue clients. And then this year, for some reason, it was like a lot of the 500,000 to like 1.2 million clients. And I don't know why. Like, we didn't change our marketing. In fact, we didn't have any marketing. So it's not like we did anything different.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. It's cool. I mean, it's cool getting bigger accounts. As long as, it's weird because the money itself doesn't necessarily mean anything about the positioning of the business or where they see themselves, but it does raise the floor. So when we're able to go from that 600 base to 750 base, when you include our management fee, it does change expectations too. So it has been nice.
Yeah.
But okay, so the second one is gross profit. We grew 19.46%, increase in gross profit. In dollar amount, it was 27,000, so just under 30. And so for the total amount being about $140,000.
Yeah. And growth. Yep. And growth. So that's literally like straight. If we had no expenses, nothing, that would just go to our pocket.
Yep.
That includes payroll for Eva, and then also what we pay on top for Lisette. So if you want to think about it, 2 part-time people on quote-unquote payroll, plus things like website hosting and our emails, our HubSpot CRM.
Wait. Did you say it includes wages and labor? Because that doesn't come down until net profit. So gross profit excludes those things, because that's why we're actually lower in net profit.
Correct. Okay. So then explain the difference then. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay, bring it back. Gross profit is before our expenses. I mean, that's the best way to say it.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why my brain short-circuited.
But so yeah, actually, I want to talk about that the most.
So 140,000 is, yeah, okay. If you just like literally remove the ad spend from our income,
yep,
that's gross profit.
Yep, and it's cool. I don't know. I'll ask you, Jake, how do you feel about it? If I say we made $140,000 gross profit, what are your feelings? And then what were your feelings if you heard that 5 years ago, that you were going to be in a business that did that? How do you feel about it now? How do you expect to feel about it in the future? Because I think about the people who will be listening to this and how they might feel about hearing that. Because if I pushed myself back, 5 years ago and I heard that, I'd be more impressed than now, because it just doesn't feel that cool now that we see everything that's needed to run things to get to that point.
Ask me the first question.
If I told you 5 years ago that you're going to have a business that made $140,000 gross profit in a year, how would you feel?
I mean, I'd feel good. I wasn't making that at all. But I mean, I don't know what the expenses are. I know I guess gross profit, but what am I taking home at the end of the day? It'd feel cool. I'll be cool with it.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
How you feel about it now?
I hate it. I have such higher, I don't have higher profit goals than Cody or higher revenue goals. I have higher expectations for where the revenue and gross profit should be at right now. And I actually wanted to be at 250,000 in gross profit this year.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this year. We didn't even make that in revenue. And a lot of that was because we slowed down to really focus on processes and train new employees. And I think we've really positioned ourselves to do something like that next year, or I guess this year, now that it's January. But this has put a lot into perspective for me, though, because this on paper, this doesn't look like a lot. There's companies that are doing 10 times as much as us. And, they've been around just as long as we have, but we've been fully transparent about how we've grown Evergrow with just us two and having no corporate managerial experience or really adequate degrees. I don't even have a degree. Cody's got a shitty one. Communications.
Yep. I'm a communicator.
Yeah. So it means nothing. But having said that, you look at where we're at, and I just bought a house this year, Cody, you're in your third year of Japan or Japanese class. You're paying for your own college out of your own pocket.
Yep. Around.
We're in Colombia on a business trip. That's essentially all expenses paid. I mean, yeah, it's coming out of our pocket technically, but it's Evergrow pocket book. And it paid for our significant others to come as well. And then everything that we do here is still technically paid by Evergrow because we're getting paid by Evergrow, in which case I guess it's different for me because I also have another job.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask how you feel in the future because I think I know what you'll say. So, but I want you, just because I want to talk about it, because I think people will eventually get to this point, ask me how I feel about our gross profit this year.
How do you feel about our gross profit this year?
That's a great question, Jake. I'm glad you asked. I think I see two steps. I see the first step for people who are doing this. Getting to 10K monthly recurring is a impressive and difficult thing. And I'll leave it at that. It's impressive and it's difficult, but also once you get there, you realize that getting to 10K a month is honestly not that hard. And it's also not the hard part of what's coming next. Because if you can get to 10K monthly, that's a decent job. You've got a $120,000 job. You can replace your job with that if you feel good about it. There are jobs that pay better than that. There are jobs that pay worse than that. But usually at that point, what you have done most likely is replace your job with another job. To get from there to the next point, basically add a zero to it, right? Go from 10K to 100 a month, which is our, next goal and what we're aiming for. You realize that's where the systems, processes, and the real work.
Yeah, 1K to 10K is nothing. That's a year. That's working for a year.
Yeah, it can be.
Going from 10K to 100K is a whole nother step.
Because it's not about you anymore.
Right. So, and that's what we really focus on this year is we hit that 10K mark actually last year, 2021. That's a reoccurring revenue. So a question for you. Do you think that a lot of agencies count their 10K reoccurring as like actual MRR, or do you think they count 10K as soon as they hit 10K in like gross profit, whether it's MRR or not?
I hope not. I hope it's not the latter, because I hope nobody's also, I think we've said it before, we base payroll and our labor estimates internally primarily on monthly recurring, because we don't want to get into the trap or the position of we don't have money to pay people because we were relying on one-off jobs.
Incoming sales.
Yep.
I don't ever want it to sell anything. I want it to just be like, reoccurring revenue, which is what MRR is, monthly recurring revenue. Except I've kind of changed that. I've made a switch using, I don't want to use MRR. I want to use MRGP.
That sounds better.
Monthly revenue gross profit, or monthly recurring gross profit.
Yep.
Because we use the profit first system, which just allows us to allocate percentages of money towards different accounts. And when you base it off of MRGP, you always know how much money you're going to have at a baseline coming in. So typically we have, it hovers between like 8 and 10K a month in MRGP, but we also have onboarding clients and other one-off like website jobs that we do, which peaks to like 30K on some months. So it just like, it's super variable, but we can always bank on 8 to 10K coming in every single month. And that's what we base our expenses on. So at the end of the year, when we have a bunch of money left over in capital expenses, because we based everything off of that 8 to 10K coming in, because we do 10% of, we only allow ourselves to have 10% of capital expenses. So if we have 10% of the MRGP, which is 8K, we have $800 to $1,000 a month to allocate towards capital expenses. But if we have a $30,000 a month because we had website builds come in as well, some websites close out, some get started, they overlap. When we got a ton of revenue, there's late payments that come in. And suddenly we've got $3,000 in the capital expense account, and we only spend what our MRGP requires. Now we've got an excess of $2,000. Well, that happens month over month. And eventually we get to the end of the year, we've got to do one of two things. We've either got to spend it, or we have to divvy it out in owner withdrawals to make sure that we can lessen the tax burden or the tax blow when the government says, hey, you made this money, even though it's not in our personal accounts. Because we're an LLC.
Yeah. So that's a good, let's talk about that briefly, and then we'll get to the last point about net profit. Because so we are an LLC, and we have not yet elected to S Corp. As I say these numbers, I'm sure some accountants are like, what are you doing? Why have you not done that yet when you've got that much money? Because they'll say you're paying more in taxes than you need to be paying, which is true. But also there's things that become less flexible when you elect to S Corp for tax purposes, and don't let you as easily move money around in the business. So as Jake said, we have accounts split. We've got internal marketing, we have capital expenses, we have payroll, all these things, and they get allocated a percentage of our gross profit. And that's where we put that money to. So it's not this originally, before Jake brought this idea up, it was a little bit of a hot mess of, we take the money in, we were mostly sticking to, I guess, the 10% capital expenses, but we weren't doing other accounts as well. Like there wasn't a specific amount of savings and that sort of thing.
Savings, marketing, payroll, whatever.
So it's gotten a lot cleaner. But yeah, so when we do get to the end of the year, because it is all technically our money, because we haven't elected to S Corp, and it is just an LLC, that kind of makes our net profit funky, because if the business is us and we're doing things and they are expenses, again, it's a gray area. We are in Cartagena. Did we come here for business? Yes. Are we having fun? 100%. It's great. It would be dumb for us to not expense this. So I'll go straight into these numbers because I'll explain where things grew for us. So actually, net profit grew the least compared to total income and gross profit. We grew 12.82%. It was about $13,000, and it pushed us up to $116,000. So I wanted to call out specifically the things that increased majorly for us. There were some things that increased, some things that decreased, but the biggest movers and increases were wages and contract labor. So that's effectively for us the same thing because we consider Lisette part of the team, but she is not an employee. So in a legal sense, there are things that we also have to be conscious of, but she is a part of the team. We treat her like the team. And when we plan for it financially, we have to pay to get the jobs done internally. So that's the same. And then the other two were software and travel. So increased wages. We made less money because we paid people more. What do you think? Anything else to add about that at least?
About net profit dropping. Well, that's when we really invested in HubSpot. HubSpot was going to be our
software.
Yeah, it's software. So like our biggest expense, one of those things Cody mentioned earlier, there's that level of moving from 10,000 to 100,000. And we had a long discussion about whether we keep HubSpot or not, because it was such a hefty expense. This month, it went from like $250 a month to like almost $700 a month now.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a hefty price. And in the way that we set up capital expenses, technically I should be saying, no, we need to get rid of HubSpot because it's exceeding 10% of our MRGP expenses. But it does help me scale as a sales rep. And then also just the capabilities it has with contracts and integration into ClickUp, which is our project management software. It puts us in a position of, yeah, but we should have this because this is like that weird step to the next spot. and we shouldn't experience that for a while, at least that weird, awkward spot.
Yeah. So right now we're making a temporary exception for HubSpot beyond our 10% rule, because we've basically said we see it as a necessary step for growth. And that's something that we talked through. It was a conscious decision. It's not something that just crept up on us and we allowed it to happen. Because I know that can happen in other businesses too. Don't do that. Don't let your expenses creep up without reason. But yeah, I mean, software was a good one. We've spent more on tools across the board. We've made lots of internal changes to what we're paying for. We're still continuing to work on this, actually. So part of it, we saw this grow and we're working to combat part of it too. One of those being, we've talked about it, we're still working through it, but getting away from Raven tools to get to Google Data Studio. So that being one way that we'll save money there.
And a really cool thing to look about. So if you look at, as two owners, Cody and myself, our net profit is $116,512. How to look at that is that's all expenses paid. That's all cost of goods sold out. That's all wages paid. That's everything. This is what's left for Cody and myself and our pockets, basically. So Evergrow, after 1,000 days, has replaced our actual day job salaries. So we both took home about 60 grand, just shy. Yeah. So,
well, and we kept some, we do keep some in the business.
Yeah. So in reality, we'll probably take home about 45 grand. And then the rest of it's in the business, in different varying accounts, but we do pull it out at the end of the year in order to help us lessen the tax blow. But we do keep some in the business still.
It's a dance every year.
Yeah.
We crunch the numbers and we're like, okay, well, we got to pay taxes, Dogla Sam. How much do we need to do that responsibly? How much do we need to keep in the business so that everybody gets paid? If things get weird, that nobody's out of a job too soon. And it's a fun talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It is. But, fortunately, we haven't had a problem like this. Last year, I asked Jeff, our accountant, he was like, hey, this is what you owe in taxes after he did all of them. And I was like, wait, that's it? And it was like $6,500. And he goes, yeah. He's like, that's it? You're my kind of client. And I was like, well, I put away 40%. Every month, Cody and I pay ourselves for owner withdrawals of basically what's in the net profit account and or the profit account, right? No. It's weird.
It is weird, right?
Okay, so
we have not yet been able to, we are not big enough to safely make payroll a locked-in percentage of gross profit, which is the end goal. But when you do that, you also lose flexibility to move money around.
Yeah, so I know what I was going to say. So it's really hard to do the profit first system if you're not an S corp.
Yes.
It's just hard because you don't have a select salary that you can allocate towards the payroll account. So what we do is we have a specific percentage that we put into the profit account, and every 3 months, every quarter, we withdraw that as our quarterly profit contributions. And
it's basically an exercise. We are prepping.
Yeah, exactly. And then whatever is left after the allocations, we assume that's payroll, which is ours. And at the end of the day, for Uncle Sam, Evergrow has paid each of us $58,000. And I mean,
right.
And running a business like this, especially when I can still have a full-time job, that makes a really healthy salary, you could do really well for yourself. Mm-hmm. Having your own side gig, running this, and then getting to a position where we're ready to really scale in 2024, 2025. I think these would be some 2 really big years for us.
So I want to do 2 more. I know this one's going a little long, but I did want to touch base on talking about more travel and then increased wages and contractor labor. So travel's fun. Let's hit on that first. We have traveled more.
Yeah.
This year has been more fun. We've spent more on travel for business, and it's been exciting.
It's only been like 2 things, really. Well, I mean, 3. Yeah, well, Lisette came, and then when we went to Lisette. But that's 2 more times that we've traveled in the past.
Yep. We finally let ourselves have a little bit more fun.
Yeah. Well, we've had money to do it now.
Yep. But so about wages and contract labor, I think this is big because of, I think we've talked about this before and said, we are not in the business of outsourcing wages and labor for the sake of saving money. Some companies are like that. They're straightforward about it. That's just not us. And that's not what we're trying to do. We increase wages and labor, and a few things happen. One, things got better. Like big surprise. Pay people more, and then things get easier for you because you're able to hire good talent. But also, we talked about this, I think, but we went from having a full-time employee to 2 part-timers, and other companies will talk about doing that to avoid benefits. But at our size, I think it's really smart, and I would recommend it for lots of companies too. And just being honest and straightforward with people that, look, we do not yet have the stability to do these things without sacrificing flexibility in other parts of the business. So when we went from a full-time employee to part-timers that we could pay them more, well, one, we got more work out of them. Like it was actually more productive because I have hot takes. I'll say them. I truly don't believe that anybody works continuously, hardcore, 40 hours a week, indefinitely.
Yeah, not even me.
It's just, it's unrealistic. For me, I'll say myself, I can do 5 hours a day, every day, deep focused work. And it's fun and it's rewarding. And so when you have part-timers and they're accomplishing things in shorter sprints, they get more done.
Yeah.
They just do.
Mm-hmm. And you get, well, and also being able to divide the brain, which I'm sure this is your next point, but like divide the brain power between different tasks and not have them, have a task switch between SEO and Google Ads. Like just get 2 people with different brains and have them tackle those one tasks with their 20 hours a week.
Yep. Yeah.
And yeah, that was a game changer, honestly. So don't be afraid. Like I think hiring the full timer for us was like a big it was like a big ego swing. We have a full time employee, whatever, but honestly, the 2 part timers was really the way to go. So previous episode about who to hire first, still holds true. Hire the first person to replace the busiest person or the most bottleneck person. But then, if you've got a partner, or maybe you're doing this all on your own and you have another duty that could be separated with another part-timer, then break that task up.
Yep.
Cool. Is that everything?
I think so. I hope this is helpful. I hope that sharing this sort of stuff is good and useful to people.
Dude, I really want to get like better podcast equipment for like these in-person ones. Yeah. Cody and I are set up like at home, but then we get like in the same room to record a podcast, like how you're supposed to, like how you've always been supposed to.
Yeah, you're watching Joe Rogan where he's got the headset and there's the table and they're across from each other, and we're just 2 dudes on pushed together couches at the moment. And
in Colombia with Cody wearing my girlfriend's t-shirt, literally.
Yep.
Because he doesn't own a Hawaiian shirt, I presume.
That's true.
And janky recording studio, but like I really want to get actual recording info or recording equipment, so when we do this next time is legit.
Yep.
So well, hopefully you guys like this episode. It's a little bit unorthodox for us, but we really thought it was cool to be able to share a little bit of this Colombian experience with you at the size of company we are, which isn't very big. So if you're looking up to us to any extent or looking for advice from us, just know that where we're at isn't that far out of reach from where you're at.
No. Yep. You can do it.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See ya.